In today's session, we are going to concentrate on images, bitmaps and drawings as used in motion graphics, visual effects, animation and experimental animation. But before we start discussing about images, bitmaps and drawings and how it has been used in motion graphics and experimental animation, it's important that we shed some light on its history. The word animation is derived from the Latin verb animare, which means to give life to. It does this by creating a world of illusion. Animation is normally defined as the creation of an illusion of movement by assembling a sequence of still images. It is important to emphasize that the quality of the sequence is more important than the quality of the images. It is possible to make a bad film with beautiful drawings or models. The art of animated film is in the action. In 1824, Peter Mark Roget, an examiner of physiology at the University of London, performed one of the first landmark inventions. For a study regarding the persistence of images on the retina, Roget conducted a series of experiments on vision. Concluding that an image is retained in human perception for only 1/16th of a second. Therefore, if a series of still images are passed in front of the eyes in a fraction of a second, that is 1/16th of the second, the eyes will have an impression of movement. This phenomenon creates the illusion of movement and led to many successful inventions in the following decades. Illusion that occurs when a bright object is wheeled rapidly round in a circle, giving rise to the appearance of a line of light throughout the whole circumference, namely that an impression made by a pencil of rays on the retina, if sufficiently vivid, will remain for a certain time after the cause has ceased. In 1892, Émile Reynaud opened his Theatre Optique in Paris with an archetype of animation created by his invention, the praxinoscope. The praxinoscope was a theatrical zoetrope with mirrors placed on an inside column that reflected out the sequential drawing that were on the inside of the drum. He was able to project 80 frames without changing reels and could project 10 to 15-minute films. His invention was used until 1900. But after this, there were no major improvements in both of his creations. They were no longer used. In 1895, Thomas Alva Edison introduced the motion picture projector. The kinetophone had a sound attachment for playing records. The viewer would look into a peephole to look at the visuals while listening to the accompanying sound through two rubber ear tubes. Later, in 1901, Edison revised the kinetophone with the help of Edwin S. Porter, changing its name to projecting kinetoscope. The revised version projected images on a wall. In 1896, James Stuart Blackton, a New York newspaper cartoonist, interviewed Edison about his experiments with motion pictures. Blackton drew some quick sketches of Edison. Edison, impressed with the speed with which Blackton completed his drawings, later photographed them. This was the first combination of photography, drawings and motion. It was released publicly in 1906 as Humorous Phases of Funny Faces and became one of Blackton's most famous productions. Until this point, animation was not used as a complete storytelling tool. However, it was used rather for creating a magical effect. Emily Cole was the first person to create more in-depth animations. His first short animation, Phantasmagorie, was shown at the Theatre du Gymnasia on 17 August 1908. At the end of his career, he had made more than 300 short animated films. Phantasmagories was probably the very first animated cartoon. Winsor Mackay, also regarded as the father of animation, had a flair for drawing from his childhood, drawing with whatever material was handy. Little Nemo 1911 was a kind of experiment which Mackay conducted, using this new upcoming medium. The experiment required around 4,000 drawings which Mackay did all by himself. Later in 1914, he showcased his masterpiece, Gertie the Dinosaur, which was quite successful. He had been inspired by a dinosaur skeleton in a museum and decided to make the dinosaur live again through his drawings. He always considered himself as an animator and treated animation more as an art form. So that was a brief history about how it all started. Basically, animation is produced by the rapid display of consecutive still images. Minimum frame rate for smooth transitions is about 15 frames per second. For film or TV, it's 24 frames per second to 25 or 30 frames per second. This is normal. For a smooth visual effect, higher frame rates may be necessary, and timing of frame display is important. So we can broadly define animation into different types: hand-drawn or traditional, that is 2D, stop motion, animatronics, performance animation, which is mocap, computer generated 3D, visual effects, the traditional method is hand-drawn, often called cell animation, where artists draw and then color each picture or frame by hand. These pictures are then photographed using a movie camera, one frame at a time, and then projected onto the screen using a normal projector. Stop motion, also known as stop action, is an animation technique to make a physically clay animation or claymation. Puppets of clay or plasticine on an articulated armature are set up and photographed one frame at a time, each frame showing incremental motion. Sand animation. Sand is manipulated using tools or fingers on a backlit surface. Each individual frame is then photographed with a camera. Animatronics, mechanized puppets with lifelike covering, were developed as long ago as 1933 for use in museums. Mechanically driven characters and prosthetics have been used in films from the 1950s. Animatronics, or the use of robotic or computer-controlled characters in contemporary film, really began with Steven Spielberg. Jaws, E.T. and Jurassic Park are the first films that featured realistic and believable animatronic actors, which could not have existed in the real world.
Spielberg film.
Making realistic human bodies and faces and animating them manually is really hard. What could we do instead? Capture real human motion. Capture real human shapes. Use them as is or modify or retarget them. Computer-generated 3D or 2D animation. 3D computer graphics are different from 2D computer graphics in that a three-dimensional representation of geometric data is stored in the computer for the purposes of performing calculations and rendering 2D images. Such images may be for later display or for real-time viewing. Despite these differences, 3D computer graphics rely on many of the same algorithms as 2D computer vector graphics in the wireframe model and 2D computer raster graphics in the final rendered display. In computer graphics software, the distinction between 2D and 3D is occasionally blurred. 2D applications may use 3D techniques to achieve effects such as lighting, and primarily 3D may use 2D rendering techniques. The first real CGI character was created by Pixar for the film Young Sherlock Holmes in 1985, not counting the simple polyhedron character Bit in Tron. It took the form of a knight composed of elements from a stained glass window.
Never be solved alone. Steven Spielberg presents
Sonia hallucination. You know it?
Young Sherlock Holmes, directed by Barry Levinson, rated PG-13.
However, CGI did not win over the motion picture industry until 1989, when Industrial Light and Magic (ILM) produced complex CGI visual effects. Most notably, a seawater creature dubbed the Pseudopad, featuring in one scene of the film. CGI then took a central role in Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991. It was the 1993 film Jurassic Park, however, in which dinosaurs created with CGI were seamlessly integrated into live action scenes, which revolutionized the movie industry. It marked Hollywood's transition from stop motion animation and conventional optical effects to digital techniques. The following year, CGI was used to create the special effects for Forrest Gump. The most noteworthy effect shots were the digital removal of actor Gary Sinise's legs. Other effects included a napalm strike, the fast-moving ping-pong balls, and the digital insertion of Tom Hanks into several scenes of historical footage.
Congratulations. How do you feel?
I gotta pee.
I believe he said he had to go pee.
2D CGI increasingly appeared in traditionally animated films, where it supplemented the use of hand-illustrated cells. Its uses ranged from digital tweening motion between frames to eye-catching quasi-3D effects such as the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast.
As the sun rising in the east.
In 1994, the hit Canadian show Reboot was aired and was credited with being the first full-length, completely computer-animated TV series. In 1995, the first fully computer-generated feature film, Pixar's Toy Story, was a resounding commercial success.
Strapped to an explosive device.
That's why. Sid.
Sure is a hairy fella.
No, he tortures toys just for fun.
Additional digital animation studios such as Blue Sky Studios from Fox, DNA Productions from Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers, Omation Studios from Paramount Pictures, Sony Pictures Animation, Columbia Pictures, Vanguard Animation from Walt Disney Pictures, Lionsgate Films and 20th Century Fox, Big Idea Productions from Universal Pictures and FHE Pictures, and Pacific Data Images from DreamWorks SKG went into production, and existing animation companies such as the Walt Disney Company began to make a transition from traditional animation to CGI. Between 1995 and 2005, the average effects budget for a wide release feature film skyrocketed from $5 million to $40 million. According to one studio executive, as of 2005, more than half of feature films have significant effects. Although CGI has made up for the expenditures by grossing over 20% more than their real-life counterparts. In the early 2000s, computer-generated imagery became the dominant form of special effects. The technology progressed to the point that it became possible to include virtual stunt doubles. Camera tracking software was refined to allow increasingly complex visual effects developments that were previously impossible. Computer-generated extras also become used extensively in crowd scenes with advanced clocking and crowd simulation software. Developments in CGI technologies are reported each year at SIGGRAPH, an annual conference on computer graphics and interactive techniques, attended each year by tens of thousands of computer professionals. Developers of computer games and 3D video cards strive to achieve the same visual quality on personal computers in real time as is possible for CGI films and animation. With the rapid advancement of real-time rendering quality, artists began to use game engines to render non-interactive movies. This art form is called machinima. Visual effects. It is the various processes by which imagery is created or manipulated outside the context of a live action shoot. Visual effects often involve the integration of live action footage and computer-generated imagery, CGI, in order to create environments which look realistic but would be dangerous, costly, or simply impossible to capture on film. Visual effects may be divided into at least 4 categories. Models, miniature sets and models, animatronics, matte paintings and stills, that is digital or traditional paintings of photographs which serve as background plates for keyed or rotoscoped elements. Live action effects, that is keying actors or models through blue screening and green screening. Digital animation or modeling, computer graphics, lighting, texturing, rigging, animating and rendering computer-generated 3D characters. Particle effects, digital sets, backgrounds. Till now, we have covered the brief history of usage of images, bitmaps and drawings in mass media at various levels. Now let us discuss what exactly are the meanings of these terms: images, bitmaps and drawings. Images may be two-dimensional, such as a photograph, screen display, and as well as a three-dimensional, such as a statue or a hologram. They may be captured by optical devices such as cameras, mirrors, lenses, telescopes, microscopes, etc., and natural objects and phenomena such as the human eye or water surfaces. In computer graphics, a bitmap or pixmap is a type of memory organization or image file format used to store digital images. The term bitmap comes from the computer programming terminology, meaning just a map of bits, a spatially mapped array of bits. Now, along with pixmap, it commonly refers to the similar concept of a spatially mapped array of pixels. Raster images in general may be referred to as bitmaps or pixmaps, whether synthetic or photographic, in files or memory. In certain contexts, the term bitmap implies 1 bit per pixel, while pixmap is used for images with multiple bits per pixel. Many graphical user interfaces use bitmaps in the built-in graphic subsystems. For example, the Microsoft Windows and OS by 2 platforms GDI subsystem, where the specific format used is the Windows and OS by 2 bitmap file format, usually named with the file extension of .bmp. Besides BMP, other file formats that store literal bitmaps include interleaved bitmap, ILBM, portable bitmap or PBM, XBitmap, XBM, and wireless application protocol bitmap, WBMP. Similarly, most other image file formats such as JPEG, TIFF, PNG, and GIF also store bitmap images, as opposed to vector graphics, but they are not usually referred to as bitmaps, since they use compressed formats internally. Drawing is a visual art that makes use of any number of drawing instruments to mark a two-dimensional medium. Common instruments include graphite pencils, pen and ink, inked brushes, wax color pencils, crayons, charcoals, chalk, pastels, markers, stylus, or various metals like silver point. An artist who practices or works in drawing may be referred to as a draftsman or draughtsman. A small amount of material is released onto the two-dimensional medium which leaves a visible mark. The process is similar to that of painting. The most common support for drawing is paper, although other materials such as cardboard, plastic, leather, canvas and board may be used. Temporary drawings may be made on a blackboard or whiteboard, or indeed almost anything. The medium has been popular and fundamental means of public expression throughout human history. The relative ease of availability of basic drawing instruments makes drawing more universal than most other media. Now, if we look at the present day scenario of new age media and digital media breakthrough, all these three terms, images, bitmaps and drawing, work in correlation to each other. Or we can also say that they are very much interdependent on each other in relation to mass media. In the age we live, almost all draftsmen, animators and motion graphic designers use their hands and fingers to apply the media and then transform it into bitmaps using photography or scanners, thus converting them into images. So we can conclude here that there is a seamless to and fro between these three to meet the end goal of producing a media piece. That is all for today. Thank you for being with us. We hope you all had a good learning experience and will go forth and discover the amazing world of animation.